Hey, my name is Mark Dahlmeyer. I'm going to be one of your co-hosts today. We're excited to kick off this series of roundtable events. So, the series of the events is really focused on the future of the RIA Tech and Leadership Roundtable series, focused on bringing together industry experts from a wide variety of areas within the industry: wealth tech, cybersecurity, regulatory compliance, operations, and advisory services, to explore the evolving intersection of innovation, governance, business strategy within the RIA community. So each of these sessions is going to be about a 90-minute recorded session, and we're going to talk about a wide variety of different topics. Again, I will be one of your facilitators and co-hosts, along with Ed Vasco from Visory. And what I want to do is introduce and kick off today's session. So today's session is something that's on top of mind of everybody in the industry, I believe, and it's AI adoption, but we're going to have a little bit different spin on this. So we're going to talk about AI adoption, but the operational realities that we're all beginning to see within the industry. So this segment is really designed to explore how RIAs, wealth tech firms, services providers, and others are navigating the real-world operational impact of AI and AI adoption. So this conversation is really going to focus on implementation realities. We're going to talk a little bit about workflow, transformation, governance, operational scalability, and then organizational change management. So it's a pretty meaty topic, and really looking forward to facilitating this session today and introducing some of the other panel members and my co-host as well. The goal of this discussion is to really move beyond a theoretical discussion around AI and focus on practical experiences, lessons learned, and operational challenges. So let's do this. If we can move the slide forward, let's do some introduction. So again, my name is Mark Dahlmeyer. I'm Chief Revenue Officer of Visory. Got 30 years of experience in the technology industry, 18 years of experience in cybersecurity risk and compliance, a six-time founder, three-time CEO, author, and market researcher within the industry. So thank you all so much for empowering me to host and facilitate this discussion. Looking forward to introducing the next co-host, Ed Vasco.
Yeah, thanks so much, Mark. I'm Ed Vasco. I'm the Chief Operating Officer here at Visory. In summary, 36 years of technology experience with a real focus on cybersecurity, six-time CEO, seven-time C-suite executive. And when I'm not specifically doing work in the industry, I'm supporting workforce development and for the nation and AI development wherever I possibly can. So thanks so much, Mark. I appreciate being here and look forward to the conversation.
Thank you, Ed. Alex.
Hi there, Mark. Alex Cunningham. I'm the Chief Information Security Officer at Advisor 360. Advisor 360 has a SaaS-based AI-powered platform for financial advisors to help them run their own practices and also provide the tools so they can provide wealth management, full lifecycle management for their clients. In terms of myself, many years in cybersecurity, primarily within the financial services sector, both here in the US and in the UK.
Awesome. Incredible background. Thank you so much, Alex. Andrew.
I'm Andrew Evans. I'm the CEO of Rossby Financial and our sister company, Rossby Office. Been in the industry 20 plus years, starting on retail side, moving into branch management supervision, and now run the RIA, as we like to call it. It is an infrastructure RIA. We engage in the lives of multiple different DBAs that work through us. And pleasure to be here. AI is fast changing, and if you don't get on it and you don't embrace it somehow, some way, you will be left behind, but you need the guardrails.
Well said, Andrew. Thank you. James.
Hey, everybody. James Cantwell. I'm the founder of the Cantwell Advisory and Wealth Tech Select. Wealth Tech Select is a directory that tracks over 1,500 technology and service providers in the wealth tech space. So it gives us a very interesting perspective when we're looking at all of the different platforms and how they're bringing AI to the forefront and making it available for users. We also have a professional services arm where we work with firms to help them implement AI, improve their practice overall, improve their operations. And I co-host the AI for Advisors podcast, which you can find on Spotify, YouTube, and wherever you listen to podcasts.
Awesome. Awesome. Thank you so much. Layla.
Hello, my name is Layla Shaver. I am the owner and managing attorney for My RA Lawyer. We are a law firm that provides legal and compliance services to RAs throughout the country with a focus on really helping operationalize compliance, reduce risk, and ultimately help firms increase their enterprise value. I feel like compliance is one of those things that's oft forgotten purposely sometimes. And so I like to be the person that comes in and reminds everyone of their obligations under state and federal rules.
Thank you so much. Let's definitely move the conversation forward. So value and appreciate everybody's time. As everybody can see, this is quite the panel, right? Decades and decades of experience. But yeah, let's dive into the first question. So, first question, what has changed most in the past 12 to 24 months regarding AI adoption inside of RIA firms and wealth tech organizations? Anybody clear? Anybody want to jump on this question? Provide some perspective?
I'm happy to jump right in. I mean, I think the biggest change is that none of the firms had to make a decision to adopt AI. It inserted itself into their organizations via the tools that they were already using. So I've heard a lot of firms make comments along the lines of like, yeah, we're interested in using AI, but we don't have time for it. We're not quite there yet. And the reality is like, it's here, it's in the products you already use. So you are forced at this point to learn how to use it responsibly to put the appropriate guardrails in place. There's really no stopping it at this phase.
Yeah, I think that's a good point. You know, that we see that as well. The genie's out of the bottle, right? And even the market research surveys and the feedback that we get from our client base tells that there is adoption, there are people leveraging the platforms, whether they're at home or whether they're on a corporate device. We do see that there's a significant amount of adoption. There is a significant amount of concern in terms of data protection, cybersecurity risk, regulatory compliance impact. So anybody else have any perspective or opinion on this particular question? And what else are you seeing in the market?
Yeah, certainly in the past, I'd say, look, 12, 24 months, whereas the idea of a AI note taker was interesting. Now, I think everybody just kind of has it and they don't know what to do with it. On top of that, as I've talked to many firms that have it, a lot of the times they might have picked one up that might not be the ongoing names that we have of like, say, like a Jump or a Zox or something like that, or a Millie. And they did it, but didn't do the due diligence enough on it. And they didn't realize that, oh, wait, that information is training that model, or they don't realize some things too, which I'm sure Layla's going to talk about, that falls into discoverability. So I think everybody has a note taker at this point. To what extent they understand it, I think that's lower, like extent of how to best utilize it, how to get the best capacity out of it, and what are your responsibilities around having one.
From my perspective, it was the rate of adoption. From 25 months ago, no one was talking about AI, and then suddenly the month later, bang, everyone's talking about it. The big thing being that tech firms have bypassed, I'll call it organizations, and gone straight to the consumer. And again, just the ease of AI. That's why the consumers are, I'll take as much as you can possibly give me. I know from a security perspective, and certainly from a wealth tech organization perspective, our mandate was to become experts at AI as quickly as we possibly could. So 2 years ago, it was use any and all AI tools, become experts, know the ins and outs of it, and how can we use that technology to further improve our platform. But you're right in terms of, Andrew, your point about checks and balances there. That was from a security perspective, it really was, hey, what do we do with this thing? Because from an end user perspective, it really is a classic risk reward. AI can do almost anything for you, but there are trade-offs there. And that's where you need to make sure that not only do you have the right checks and balances in place, to your point, you know what the AI tool is actually doing, particularly in the background.
So does the panel believe that the AI adoption is being driven by fear of missing out or strategy, efficiency, all of the above? What's your perspective on that?
I'm going to jump in because that's part of what I get asked all the time with my clients. And there is a huge component of fear of missing out. Most of the prospects that come to us and initially speak with us don't have an actual goal for how they want to use AI. The goal is to use AI, right? They're starting out with, we want to make sure we're not falling behind. I think that's one of the big fears. We want to make sure we're not missing out on this opportunity. And they're very much starting out with this place of fear. And when I ask, like, well, what do you want to achieve? What are the areas? What are the specific goals that we want to reach? There's not a definitive answer. It's really more about, well, we just want to learn, we want to figure out. So there are some that I think are a little more in a discovery phase. It may be a little less fear driven and it's a little more like, hey, we know this is something we should be looking at. So can you help us figure that out? And then the other half is just straight up fear. Like, we need to figure out how to use this, build something with AI for us so that we can say we have AI.
What's been the evolution, in your opinion, in terms of 12 months ago versus today? Are you seeing, much more specific business use cases, application use cases, like role-based use cases? Or to your point, are you just saying just general awareness? Hey, we want to enter some type of research and development or testing phase just to really get a broader understanding of what its capabilities are before they kind of dive into things. What's the difference between 12 months ago versus today?
Are you asking that from what I'm seeing with advisors or more from my perspective?
Yeah, a little bit of both.
Okay. I think for advisors, they're still very much asking us to leverage it for more of a point solution, right? So it's really like, hey, what's the best note taker? And what's funny is, like, note taker isn't really even a thing. It wasn't a thing for very long. They're really AI assistants. Many of them are agentic, and we can get into like what agentic means. But it's still very much point solution. Like, I have a symptom and I want to apply AI to that symptom. What we're trying to do is help them see AI as part of a much broader strategy, and not every solution along the way or every workflow we design requires AI to be forced into it. So we're trying to be a lot more thoughtful about, like, what are the goals you're trying to achieve? What would move your operation, your business forward the most? What would have the most impact? And then figure out what's the right way to design it. And AI likely shows up in a large number of how we design some of those solutions, but we're trying to get them to think far more holistically about the problems they're trying to solve and how we can leverage AI across the organization. And I'll just say one more thing on that. One of the biggest areas where firms aren't even getting the value out of the tools that they're using currently, right? We've already mentioned like Jumps and Zox and Millie and some of the others, is they're not spending the time on the setup that the vendors actually provide them. And the vendors aren't necessarily forcing them to go through the setup. So if these tools don't have context, they don't have some sort of awareness of what it is that your firm is doing, of the broader customer relationship that you have, of the services that you offer, then they're going to give relatively generic responses. The benefit of these tools right out of the box is that they actually understand financial services and financial advising. And so they understand those terms and certain concepts, things like that. And they have some built-in guardrails, right? And some compliance tools. So that's great, but most people aren't even leveraging what they've already been using.
Yeah, and that's common, right? If we look at the last, 40 or 50 years in technology evolution and some of the big tectonic shifts that have happened, whether it be cloud, BYOD, or right, some of these other technologies, even ERP, CRM systems, right, automation systems, we find that the manufacturers are concerned about moving licenses, moving systems, and, putting new logos up. But the reality is a lot of organizations don't even use 35, 45, 50, 60% of the capabilities that are within the platform. So that's common, right?
Yeah, I don't think that's a new problem, but I think it's why you're seeing differences in some of these surveys that are coming out and saying that, like, AI is not really moving the needle for them. They're not realizing the value that they thought. And the reality is that it hasn't been configured properly. Right. So I think that's why, like, it's funny when I see these data driven surveys and some of the folks out there, right, who gravitate towards them and use those results. And I go, yeah, but that makes sense to me. It makes sense to me that we're not seeing this value because most of the people using them aren't educated on how to use them properly. Most of the vendors aren't incentivized to get you to spend the time to set it up. They're sold at a low price point. And when you're selling something at $50 a month or $75 a month, to really do a proper onboarding is not something they're going to be a white glove service that goes along with that at that price point.
Yeah, well said. I think those are fantastic observations.
For me, the back to your white glove service in terms of setting up AI tools correctly, the technology, in my view, should be intuitive enough that it's easy, that it does get set up. And if it's not, then I think the software industry has a bigger issue. But back to Mark's first question in terms of, for me, the common first use case for using or adopting AI is efficiency gains. Taking once manual tasks and automating them so you don't have to think about it. So you're getting more time back. And ultimately, from a financial advisor perspective, hopefully that allows them to focus more on their clients, hopefully do more marketing activities to gain more clients, and ultimately making their life easier.
Yeah, I think that's a great point. If we, again, turn the clock back a couple of decades, you had some boutique consulting firms and Big Five, right, coming out doing, business process optimization, business process automation, assessments and analysis. And, this is where the KPMGs and the PwCs of the world would come up with these, with these benchmarks that say, hey, if you have to have a human touch a piece of document to process an order, right, like that costs $100 to do that, those types of things. And with a wide variety of technologies, SaaS technologies, right, desktop-based technologies, and now AI that have been permeating the industry, right, for decades, I do think that some of that gets lost in organizations just in terms of a conscious awareness or a thought process around how do I drive more efficiency through these types of technologies? And even before I do that, how do I take a look at organizational architecture? How do I take a look at my organizational data flow, my workflows, right? Responsibilities, capabilities, matrices. And so at least this is what we see. What we see in the market is a lot of organizations, to all of the panelists that spoke, to your points, there's a massive FOMO. We're in the hype cycle, right? And everybody's trying to figure out what this is and how to leverage it. But what many organizations haven't done is paused and said, okay, let's talk about the current organization that we have today, the current business model and the services that we provide today. And let's understand the current state of those. And then let's talk about the future state. Like, what do we want this business to look like? What do we want our portfolio to look like? What do we want our services to look like? And what type of customer experience do we want? And then how do we architect based upon those goals and objectives? And that's a organizational mindset shift, right? That we see a lot of organizations struggling with. And so as many of you are consultants and experts in the industry, that kind of sets up and kind of tees up the next question. Unless somebody else has something to add to this question, I was going to say we can pivot and jump to the next question.
I wanted to ask if Layla had like any legal changes or like what you felt over there. I think everybody needs to know that too. Like, that's great. It's a program.
100%.
Like,
yeah.
What actually changed?
Pay Andrew to cue me up for these things. He always follows through. He earns every buck.
I throw the softballs.
He's been trained well, right? I think to answer your question, it probably goes into the next kind of question, Mark, that you want to consider as an organization. But there are legal considerations to the use of AI, right? We talk about privacy, we talk about intellectual property, trademarks, things like that, the kind of issues that came up when NFTs first came out. So I think those are still considerations. And, I know we spent a lot of time on this question, so I won't delve too deeply into kind of the operations side, but, I think the legal and compliance and regulatory side of these questions really get pushed to the back. And oftentimes a business plan is developed and sometimes even implemented without considering those questions. And, you really got to think about those legal considerations and risk, as well as kind of the regulatory requirements at the beginning, or as close to the beginning as possible. And you got to involve compliance and legal in these questions about how to operationalize AI. What is the use of it? Which AI are we going to use? And understanding how that impacts your business.
And to your point, for many, that's a different way of thinking.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, let's be real. The majority of RIAs are small firms under 100 million. They don't got the time, right? Like, you're right. Everyone and their mama is interested in AI. I go to these conferences, and the segments on AI are always the most crowded, standing space only kind of deal, and everyone's interested. But, I've spoken at these conferences, and I like to survey attendees, and most of the firms, they're all thinking about it. They're afraid to implement AI. And yes, it's being forced upon them, but they don't have the time. When you're talking about solo practitioners and small firms that are just a handful of people, they're just trying to keep up with the everyday, let alone putting aside time to really strategically think about the use of AI, how to implement it in their business, and frankly, develop a plan, right? I'm talking to multi-billion AUM firms that I ask, what's your business plan for the next 24 months? They have no effing clue. What can we expect from the solo practitioner? What can we expect from the small practice? What can we expect from the RAs? That's 3-4 advisors that are siloed. They all decided operationally to get together under one RA, but they're basically managing their own businesses. So I think when we're talking about AI, we really have to segment the conversation based on size and complexity of the RA.
Yeah, well said. I do think that there's a significant dependency on maturity, on evolution, right? Like where are they at in terms of overall, I'd say overall, business evolution, business maturity when it comes to strategic planning, change management, transformation, those types of things. Anybody else before we move to the next question?
I would say education is a key component as well. Again, there's lots of headlines, right? Every day there's a new AI tool out there, there's a new headline out there, there's a new negative headline. And so being able to actually dissect the news and educate ourselves appropriately to make sure that we actually know what the tool can do, and then moreover what it can't do, and what the other options are as well. Because again, every day there's a new AI company spinning up, the latest and greatest technology with this, that, and the next thing. And so it can be overwhelming for RIAs, again, when time is at such a premium, for them to actually take the time to actually invest in it.
Yeah, well said. And again, this is why the ecosystem exists, right? This is why solution providers and consultants and this is why we exist. The technology manufacturers, software companies, OEMs, they make the market, right? And they set the pace in the market. And the consultants and solution providers do their best to keep pace, right? And innovate and operationalize. So I think that's a great point. Thank you. Let's dive into the next question. Where are firms seeing the most measurable and operational value from deploying AI, and where are the expectations over their skis in terms of reality? Pretty meaty question.
If you don't mind, I'd like to jump right in here. So, working with multiple DBAs inside of our infrastructure RIA, I don't see that much, honestly. I just don't see that. I think they've become, operational value lives in things like we just talked about. It's been in the note takers. It's faster to create tasks for them, but we have not seen a wide adoption in running a full workflow because your Zox tool told your Redtail to do these things. I just don't see it yet because of complexities of the business itself. Or it produces it and then they say, yeah, well, it got it to this point and then I had to go back and change it anyway. So definitely I'd say for us, and from what I have seen over our partner firms that work with us, is that it's not that much yet. It's not that much yet. Nobody's really doing like the direct indexing programming or really doing a whole lot of building portfolios with AI or doing trading with AI. But then again, I probably run with a more conservative group of offices. But that's what I'd say, just to throw that one out there.
Do you suspect that there are some unicorns kind of doing some black ops testing and, creating kind of that next generation AI powered RIA?
Yeah, somebody out there actually has it, but it's not the big ones. It's not the big firms. Any gigantic firm says, oh, well, we have agentic AI. No, you don't, because you don't even know what it means. So right now, that's what I'd say is that there's probably some more of the people that Layla has been working with, that James have been working with, a smaller, more nimble, let's say a technology forward person who has figured something out. That person has probably the most measurable value so far. That's my pure guess. Maybe we should go on, what is it, Clashy, and take bets on it, but don't do that.
Yeah, no, that's a good point. And, we saw these unicorns appear in the insurance industry, right? In terms of hybrid cyber compliance, right? Brokerages. And it's very interesting to watch some of these unicorns enter the market and try to offer some converged services. But I'd be interested to see if anybody else has any other feedback or input on this question, and what else are you seeing just in terms of organizations who are attempting to create operational, value, streamlining operations, other workflow considerations. What else is everybody else seeing?
So I love how Andy kind of teed this up because I think he's right that most aren't seeing the value, and it's really at like two opposite ends that are, right? There are some really large firms that have been very strategic about focusing on and experimenting with AI and figuring out how they're going to do things. And you see them really doing things via what they're building themselves and who they're partnering with to really implement AI across the organization. And then a very small number of smaller, nimble firms who are probably led by a very tech forward, less conservative leadership. And they're trying to build their own sort of way through this. And they were probably early adopters of tools like Jump and have probably moved on to building their own workflows and probably are using agentic AI. And that's some of the firms that I work with and I'm starting to work with now. I think what's more interesting is kind of the trend that we're seeing and partly like why we're not seeing these returns. So if we take a step back, right? Like I've been in this industry for basically 30 years now, and I've been on the wealth management side. I spent 10 years at on the wealth tech side and now over 10 years consulting. And one of the things that we've kind of seen is this pendulum back and forth between like all of ones and best of breed. And I think we're swinging back towards more all in ones, some consolidation, although I would call it a completely new incarnation of what an all in one is. But with the all in ones, we had all the data in one place, right? But the problem that we had is they were really kind of generalists. They were never really good at multiple things. It was hard for them to get a lot of breadth, right? They couldn't, or excuse me, couldn't get a lot of depth. They had a lot of breadth. And then what we got was this era of point solutions and this best of breed. And so with that, we started to solve for problems really deeply, but we created this integration problem. And now integrations just became such a big buzzword. All these sites talk about all the integrations that they have between different things. And I'm going to take a pause here because if you think about how we're applying AI at this exact moment, we're applying AI to how we're used to doing things currently, right? So we're seeing all these symptoms, all these integration gaps, and we're trying to figure out how to get these two systems to talk to one another and use AI to copy data from A to B. It's a little bit of that efficiency stuff that Alex talked about earlier, right? So what we're really doing is we're saying, how do we solve yesterday's problems with today's technology? And what we're not doing is revisiting, like, how should this workflow actually happen using today's technology? Should it even exist the way it does? Should it be in these separate applications? Which brings me back to this all in one. You're seeing a lot more firms, and I'm sure Alex and Advisor 360 have a lot to say about this, but I think you're going to see more firms be successful with now being able to go both deep and wide because AI enables them to code faster, QA faster, develop, listen to their customer base. And if they built the right underlying architecture, this data integration problem starts to dissipate. And now you can think about using agentic workflows. You can think about a process from prospecting to onboarding to funding to portfolio construction to compliance monitoring, et cetera, all the way through. And so you start getting a lot more power when all the data isn't siloed and you don't have to solve for all these integration issues along the way.
And to your point, that's a big if, right? And also from our perspective, what we're seeing is just massive growing amounts of technical debt being created, right?
I don't disagree with that.
Because of the rate of change, right?
But you're also seeing firms being willing to throw away, right? Like,
100%.
I mean, personally, I build tools and I have thrown away just as much code as I've written, right? So it, the technical debt is a little different, and I don't want to get us like in the weeds, but in the past, and it's still true for the larger firms, right? The larger firms that are building tons of technical debt have a lot more to manage when they make a change. The smaller technology providers could literally go back to zero and like
Right.
rebuild their product faster than they might be able to
That's-
evolve it once they reach a certain point of technical
That's what
debt.
Slant did. Slant did that. They had basically a simple marketing calendar tool, and then from all the feedback that they were getting, they just said, stop. Okay, stop. We'll service who it, but stop. We're going to rebuild. And they disappeared for a few months and came back as Slant. And I tell you what, right now, I think they did it right. You know, I mean, I've gone around. I'm sorry, I'm just going to babble now. That, you know, all half of last year I would go around, and when I speak to people, I try to tell everybody that the AI note taker is the herald to the death of the CRM as we know it. And then like 2 months later, here comes Slant, and it's like, well, there you go. There it is. There's like, and so for all of these like CRM companies too that sell out to these firms, like, you got to figure it out, guys. You know, you bang the rocks
100%.
together. You got to get going.
The paradigm's changed,
Yeah.
right?
Sorry, that was my rant for you.
No, I
Love
mean,
it.
but I appreciate that, Andy. I mean, I think you're spot on, and Slant is a really strong story to tell because they did exactly that, right? And that's the point. The interesting thing, and Slant again is a good example, is that they now have more context, right? They have the entire customer relationship. They have all of the discussions, right? They have an integration with current clients so that they get telephone, and they also have video. So they're capturing and text, right? So they're capturing all of the communication with the client, which is actually a drum I've been beating on a long time, which is we're so used to working in email. And I think we're going to start, at least with the advisor, right? Like, I don't think email's going anywhere in a short period of time, but I think with the advisor, you can start controlling the communication channels a little bit more. And by having all the communication in one place, it means you have a better understanding of your customer and your relationship with your customer, right? You don't have to worry about like, oh, I got to grab emails and then I got to go grab docs from OneDrive or Google Drive. Oh, and I got to grab this and I got to grab my financial plan from here. It's all of this siloed data that, yes, today we can build integration on top of it. AI can work across that data. It's not insurmountable, but when you start collapsing that into a more centralized location, things get a lot easier and the AI gets a lot more powerful because of the context.
I jump in just really quick because
Please.
again, it's for me, it's about the firms and where they are. And AI can be great, right? But if your data is garbage, no amount of AI coding is going to do anything for you, right? Like, I can say from compliance testing perspective, if I want to do my DOL rollover analysis for a client, I got to go find the documentation I need to do that. No amount of AI is going to tell me that the client services person is scanning in the new account paperwork, statements, DOL rollover information, all of it into one file and leaving it as scan 0643-B, blah, 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 blah. No amount of AI is going to be able to pull that data, do an initial analysis for me, and spit out what it thinks about it, right? So when we talk about operationally how to use AI, you got to get your workflows internally cleaned up. You've got to get your data management cleaned up first. And that does not need AI. That needs training, it needs education, it needs people, it needs to have a standard process, right? Those lovely operational SOPs, right, on how to save documents, where to save them, because then the AI component can come in and really help streamline those kind of manual administrative processes. But when people are listening here today, I don't want them to be like, oh, this all sounds so sexy. It's going to change my life. I'm going to spend 5 minutes doing these things every day. If your data is garbage, it's not going to help, right? Like, I've got clients that changed CRMs 8 times in the last decade, and their data is a mess. Nobody knows where anything is. Someone who was there for 30 years is the gatekeeper of all the knowledge. Those kinds of things have to be cleaned up operationally first before AI is going to come in and streamline or make anything more efficient.
Leo, I have a comment on that because I agree with a lot of what you said, but not necessarily the order of operations.
Like
Um,
all the men in my life.
so as far as like, I think what's really important there is AI doesn't suddenly fix historical data, right? If you have a data governance problem,
Right.
AI can't fix it historically. Don't get me wrong. It can help you with the cleanup process, but it can't fix it historically. But if you've done what Layla said, which is define what your processes are, what it can do is it can help you stop that from this point forward and give you more time to clean up the data. Right. I think one of the biggest things that I see is firms that think they have to do this big data cleanup process before they can get value out of AI. And I think that's the absolute
Mhm.
worst thing you can do, right? And this is coming from someone who gets paid to help do data cleanups and that sort of thing. So it would benefit me to say, like, yeah, by all means, go do these big projects and we'll help you do it. I don't think that's the right thing to do. I think that is a waste of time to do up front. What you really need to do is understand what your processes are, what you want them to be. What you then can do is start to build a current state of what is my relationship with this client? What do things look like today? What is the current financial plan? And you can start to get those things set up with the appropriate infrastructure and put a data governance plan in place. Now, do you have to go back and clean up data? If your data really is garbage, yeah, but that has nothing to do with AI, right? If your
Right.
data is garbage, your data is garbage. Like that's a firm problem that you should be working on anyway. The AI just surfaces it because now you're trying to shove in a whole bunch of data. I wouldn't even call it context data and asking the AI to turn it into context. And that's where it's going to choke. So,
Alex, why don't you tell us about data, surfacing data, pulling in data? Because you guys have a little bit, I think, right?
Just a little. I have to say, I honestly didn't think we were going to talk about data architecture in this call.
That's all. That's all we were going to talk about. That's all we're ever talking about.
James, you're my
Interdependencies, brother. Interdependencies.
James is my new best friend. So thank you for the softball there. For me, it's all about data, right?
Yeah.
Again, how do we trust the when you put data in, how do you trust the output? If the integrity of the data isn't sound, then regardless of what technology you're using, AI or not, the data is garbage, that we've already discussed. That's where firms like Advisor 360 really do have a head up against all the rest of the competition because they've had a focus on data management since day one. And that's not a plug for the platform, that's just a fact. And it underscores the need that you do have to have strong data governance in there in order to get the benefit of what AI can actually produce for you. And if you don't have that, fine, you can draw the line today and say from today going forward, our data is going to be sound and AI, we can take the advantages of it. But if you don't have the data in a good place, whether it's 50 years old or whether it's 5 minutes old, then garbage in, garbage out.
And to your point, that's not just with AI, right? Whether if
Exactly, yeah.
right, I mean, if you're deploying a CRM, an ERP, a financial system, right, a marketing automation system, I mean, that's the truth, right? That's
Yeah,
gospel, what you just spoke.
exactly. The other thing I point out, again, James, great points that you raised. One of the points you said a second ago was that email is here to stay. Email probably is here to stay, but in my view, not in its current form. An advisor nowadays, rather than being chained to a laptop, is going to use their mobile device. And they're not going to compose an email on their mobile device, they're going to dictate it. And therefore, one thing I think the stopwatch is on is the application layer of technology. I think that time is coming to an end. I don't know how long it will take, but in the future, through AI, it'll all be voice driven. It'll be less of fingers to the keyboard. Again, that convenience of technology, giving the advisors as much technology as they're willing to consume in the palm of their hand, as opposed to being tied to a laptop.
Great perspectives. Any other panelists want to cover this topic? Have anything else to add to this topic?
The final thing I would mention, Mark, is I honestly never thought I would say this. So I've been a CISO for 10 years, two firms. And as I said at the start there, I've been in this field for many, many years. The number one lesson I've learned, particularly over the last 10 years, is the need for a great end user experience. If you don't provide a great experience for the end user, certainly from a security perspective, they'll circumvent you. And that's the worst thing that can ever happen for a CISO, because then you give yourself a false sense of security.
Well,
A-
Alex, a lot of the program, I'm sorry, now we're running on something else. You can kick me off, Mark, but like, Alex, what you're saying is something that we believe in, that, my COO believes in, that we always believe in is that,
Yep.
well, guess what? You have to have feedback directly from your end users to know what you're building, or you get the Kitsies map. We'll say it like that.
Exactly,
Okay.
yes.
Like,
Exactly.
it's just, we have all these tech bros that showed up in our industry and they're just building stuff. And it's just stuff. And then when you go to work it and you try to use it, it's like, who the hell built this thing? Why would I
Exactly.
do that? Well, use this is our compliance tool. It works great. Go, no, nobody works like this.
Exactly.
Nobody does this. Well, that's what I read you did. Okay, fine. All right, that's all I'll say about that. Okay.
No, I think that's great. I think like this topic and this particular, right, thought process actually transitions into the next question, because the next question is really about governance, oversight, and responsible adoption. So, for example, what operational infrastructure and governance challenges are firms underestimating, right, as they move forward with their initiatives? And a lot of this comes down to how are they adopting? So, to your point, if you don't have this closed feedback loop,
Mhm.
right? If you're building, software or AI capabilities, right, in an ivory tower, and you're not speaking to the people that are and engaging the workers that are actually doing the work, or the businesses that are actually leveraging these technologies, interfacing with the customers, right? Then how do you know what you're building is actually going to be effective? And so, kind of reframing the question, it's really about how are organizations balancing experimentation with the need for governance and oversight. So, like, what are we all seeing in terms of governance, oversight, and this balance between kind of R&D and testing and actually deploying? What are we
I
seeing?
can tell you from a wealth tech provider perspective, as technologists, we often talk about things in the form of people, process, and technology.
Yeah.
There's a fourth one for me that eclipses all three, and that's of culture. And certainly from an organization perspective, having a security culture. And so it was mentioned earlier before about our software development lifecycle, how AI can really, really help speed that up. It can help our engineers write better code. But if you don't have the right governance and oversight actually integrated into the development lifecycle itself, then it's for nothing. It's kind of like having a policy that sits on a shelf gathering dust, right, as opposed to actually being followed. One of the biggest things that we've done as an organization over the last 24 hours, last 24 months, has been really integrating what our security best practices into our security lifecycle. And it's critical. Again, classic risk reward, as I mentioned earlier. We can turn around technology a lot faster. Our code is stronger, it's better. We can test it quicker, and we can get it into the market far, far quicker than we've done in the past. But if we don't trust the technology, if we don't trust the code, how can we expect our customers to trust it? And so therefore, that culture of, yes, we are writing the best right code, we are testing it appropriately, we are ensuring that all the challenges that come with AI, hallucinations, lack of trust, etc., 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 that we can address all these issues before we go into market itself. But that starts with the culture of the organization.
So, what are some of those cultural governance oversight best practices that organizations can leverage as they begin to move through that journey?
Is that for everybody or just Alex?
Yeah, and anybody can answer that.
Okay, my first comment there is going to be don't believe it, try it yourself first, only on yourself.
Mm.
Don't let it get out. That's one. Also, I'd just like to share to the governance side of things. I heard way too much recently, way too much. People talk about utilizing ChatGPT or Claude or a Copilot. And when they talk about security, so operational infrastructure, governance, so forth, they just say, oh, you just get the paid one and then it's okay. You are so far off. You like, oh, I'm giving Claude $100. It's totally fine now for me to put my information in there. No, rethink that real fast.
Exactly. That was one of my priorities. Again, 24 months ago when this thing all exploded, working on a security first principle. If you can't see it, how can you secure it? How can you protect it? So we were very lucky that we found this AI startup firm that gives us the insight internally within our organization that shows us exactly what AI tools are in our environment, what users are using it for, providing us the insight so we can then actually govern it. And we started, again, 24 months ago, I presented to our executive leadership. We had something like 400 AI tools in our environment. Now that could be specific AI tools or other technologies that have AI enhancements on top of it. And that number just blew everyone's mind. There's no way we have that. The other thing you mentioned there as well, Andrew, is either the use of using your company credentials versus using your private credentials. And again, my priority hasn't changed from a security perspective. My number one mandate is to protect the data our customers entrust us to protect. And again, using that first principle of being able to see what's going on in our environment helps us tremendously to actually protect that.
Lele, do you have any comments about governance risk, the impact of organizations moving faster than their oversight and governance models?
She has all of them.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, there's frankly, most of the firms that are listening are probably doing nothing to safeguard data or thinking about processes. You know, I always ask when I'm on AI panels, I always survey the audience and I ask, you know, when was the last time you looked at your cybersecurity policy? Do you know if you even have one, right? When was the last time it was updated? What kind of safeguards do you have in place? A lot of advisors, like when the note takers first came out, I would get on a call and there would be 12 different note takers and 3 actual people. And, you know, it's like all of a sudden it's like, oh, you downloaded this note taker? Oh, yeah, I'm trying out this note taker. But there's no firm-wide policy on, do you need to ask for permission first before downloading a new AI tool on your computer? You know, have you gotten it approved in terms of like vendor due diligence? These are still, it's a tool, it's an application, but it still has to go through vendor due diligence. You still have to understand how they use your data. And AI, at least on the retail side, right, and it being accessible to everyone in the world, has only been the last couple of years. So a lot of these companies that are implementing these systems and offering it for sale are newer companies. What vendor due diligence have you done? You know, so I think a lot of this for me comes down to accountability. Yep. Do you have a written process and policy when it comes to AI tools? Is there a process to get them approved? Do you have some sort of testing methodology? Legal and compliance are always about trust, but verify, right? So understanding what your team is utilizing. Well, how do you know what your team is utilizing? How are you monitoring their devices? How are you monitoring what websites they're going to, what tools and software they're downloading? If that's not part of your cybersecurity policy to be able to do those things, to have devices enrolled in some sort of monitoring system, then don't even think about touching AI, right? Like clean that stuff up first. You know, we know small firms and large firms, frankly, that like security, technological security, cybersecurity considerations, they're like the last thing they clean up, right? They'll clean up operations, they'll hire and recruit, they'll improve their tech stack. Compliance, legal, and technology security are like last on the list always. And it's unfortunate because those are probably the most important things before you get started on all the other things. So it's having a process, it's having accountability with your team, right? I sometimes feel like I already have 3 children. Sometimes I feel like I have more because of that system of accountability, but you have to do that given the nature of the data that our industry gets access to. So there needs to be, you almost have to be like anal about it. Like you've got to get in on your team. You've got to do continuous trainings. You've got to do continuous testing. You've got to call people out. You've got to write people up for failing to follow those policies. And I know that touches on like HR and employment law issues, and those are things to consider as well. But you've got to have that level of visibility. So putting those things in place, testing them out, and then making small to incremental improvements, and then working in, like I always talk about when you're utilizing AI, go low risk, high value at first, right? I'm always talking about my girl chat. I love my girl chat. She's the best administrative assistant I've ever had, right? And so I always encourage our clients to get with my girl chat and go write a job ad, develop a job description, right? Those are low risk things they can start utilizing AI for to help build out the workflows, start building efficiency, start thinking about who's doing what by when. let's do those basics first, right? Let's build the foundation before we start bringing in more sophisticated uses of AI, right? So that's kind of how I've always approached it. You've got to have the process, and I know it sucks to write SOPs, and that's coming from me as a securities attorney that writes policies and procedures every day. It's my least favorite thing to do. I'll say it in public. I've said it here. It's recorded. I hate drafting policies and procedures.
AI does it really well.
It's necessary, but people, I think James mentioned it before, people write these policies and it sits on a shelf and collects dust. You've got to constantly train your team. People are the best thing about running a business. They're also, sorry to say it, the worst thing about running a business, right? So you've got to keep on top of your team. You've got to make sure that accountability is there. You've got to make sure you're testing the use. You have regular testing, understanding how your team's using different AI tools. I had an incident last week with a client where they found out one of their employees is using a personal version of Claude and has been putting a bunch of stuff that they shouldn't be into the little chat with Claude, right?
Mhm. Yep.
We should know about these things. We should be having conversations with staff about personal use. Where is it appropriate? When is it appropriate? What devices is that appropriate on, right? And I think I look at it like text messaging. When text messaging became a thing a while ago, firms were like, no one's allowed to text message. No. And then finally, the last couple of years, SEC came out like everyone's using text messaging. Your grandmama, who's 90 years old, has learned how to text message and is texting her financial advisor. You cannot
100%.
ignore it. AI adoption has been way faster than text messaging adoption. So the same kind of logic applies. You can't ignore it. You can't say it doesn't exist, we don't use it. You have to say people are using it. And I've got to put some policies and some rules in place. I've got to train. And then I have to be very systematic as to how I plan to slowly but surely implement it in the business. Because it is the future. The businesses that survive the next 20 years are going to be using AI.
And
Go ahead,
sorry,
Mark.
I was just going to say, and I love how you frame that, right, in terms of the accountability and really, being responsible for the education, for the conversation, for normalizing, right, the process, the workflow, and really kind of bringing that to the surface. I do think that a large number of organizations, especially if they outsource IT, right, to an MSP or an MSSP or outsource areas of their regulatory compliance or their cybersecurity monitoring, there's an assumption that, oh, I've outsourced that, so I don't need to own that, or I don't need to oversee that, or, my third party has that. And I think that assumption is a really slippery slope, even though that is part of the value proposition that's expected from a third party. At the end of the day, right, there is some shared responsibility, but you as an entity, as a firm, right, need to own some level of accountability and have some level of responsibility in terms of your own governance, your own standards and practices, in terms of adoption, in terms of training, in terms of right enablement, and then evolving right those areas of the business along the way. And this comes down to, what is a practical framework for really responsible AI adoption and responsible AI deployment. So I kind of wanted to frame some of what you talked about in that manner. But sorry, any other thoughts?
I would just
Yeah,
add,
I mean,
I
I
was
think
just
this
going to
is.
say, we
Oh,
all know
sorry,
what
Leila.
happens when you assume, right?
Mark, I
So
would
don't.
add, in many ways, nothing has changed, right?
Mhm.
Having a strong governance, we've needed that for the longest time. But what has changed is the rate of pace, the rate of adoption by users. And so processes such as third-party risk management or software procurement, in many ways, are no longer fit for purpose today because they're unable to respond quick enough to the business. And that's the big difference that people are looking at now. When I speak to my peers across multiple industries, we all say the same thing. As long as you have a strong security foundation, then from a data protection or from a cybersecurity protection, you're likely to be okay. But it's that pace. So one task that once took a day, a week, a month, we're talking minutes now. And so how do you keep up with the business to ensure, again, those guardrails are in place, they're effective, and they're actually doing the job they were designed to do? That's the big challenge.
There's two threads that I picked up there, both from Leila and Alex. Alex said it outright, and I think Leila hinted at it, which is that not much has changed, right? If we look at this, Layla talked about all the things that your business should already have in place. You should already have a due diligence process. You should already be tracking the different tools that you use. You should already have a cybersecurity posture. This should be documented. You should already be training your staff. None of this is new because of AI, right? The human has always been the biggest liability in terms of security and vulnerability into the firm, all the same. It's all true. So we have to treat it the same way. This is just some minor tweaks. And I think there's 5 things that you can do to really incorporate and be ready for AI. So, one, an inventory of every tool, and just add AI tool into that. You should understand every tool that's used in your business. You should have a written policy that's inclusive of AI and how AI can be used within your organization. You should be able to audit it. So you should be using one, definitely a paid plan, Andy. You should be using one of those paid plans, right? But you should be sure that you have a way to audit what is being done, right? And so that's part of your due diligence with the different vendors you're going to use. You should absolutely have a human in the loop on anything that is client facing, right? There can be things like moving data from A to B that are a little less needing of a human in the loop, but absolutely anything client facing needs to have a human in the loop. And then disclosure, essentially, it needs to be anything that's required on your Form ADV. Make sure you're being accurate in reporting and disclosing how you're using these things. I think that's it. It's not this big, scary, overwhelming mound of things to do. And there's plenty of firms out there like Visory and others that I'm sure can help you do this.
Mm-hmm.
And you're right, James. Those are all things that you should be doing. In fact, are required from a state and federal law perspective. And I will be here to tell you that those are the things that get missed the most when our firm comes in and is reviewing programs, compliance programs, operational infrastructure for RIAs. They're missing the basics. So until you get the basics covered, my stance has been don't move forward. You need to cover the foundation of what it's going to take to go start using AI first. And that's always been a problem. I can't tell you how many firms, they didn't do their annual compliance review, which includes the due diligence, which includes Reg SP update.
Yep.
Yeah.
Right? Everyone's now required under Reg SP to data map. That includes AI. So, I mean, you're not saying anything that isn't already required. It's just still not happening.
Yeah, I think a lot of the time some of these smaller RIAs, I shouldn't say it like that. We'll just say less operationally inclined. They tend to fool themselves into like, oh, I can totally do this because I hired Comply, so it's fine. And it's not. You do have to have a mind for both things. You can't just be well, I'm a really great advisor, so I could do this. Okay. Yes, but did you know that you have there are 54 things you have to be doing just to turn the lights on. Can you do that? Probably not. Probably not. And a little bit of that, we'll say that their hubris, which we're all, we can all have our hubris be a bit of a trouble for us. However, I think AI is going to be where a lot of people fall into that trap. I have the AI tool that does it. Like, no, you still need the gang over at my RA lawyer. You still need them because you don't have, it doesn't matter what AI tool you have. You still need to know how things work.
I think one of the
I think it's weird for me, but there seems to still be a trust of large corporations, right? Like people trust these companies. They're going to do what's best. They're not going to fool me. They're not going to sell my data. They're not going to, you know what I mean? It's like there's still this naivete.
Wells Fargo is totally fine all the time, perfectly, no errors ever.
Don't get me started on Wells Fargo. Don't even get me started on them. But I mean, I think there is kind of, whether it's hubris or just digging a hole and putting your head in it, of just refusing to really consider, like, trust nobody in this industry. Everyone's trying to get access to your data, right? So act like you don't trust anybody. Like me on eHarmony when I was starting dating on social media, like, trust nobody, always do background checks, right? Like, you can't trust what people and companies are telling you. You always have to independently verify. And that to me is still, when I talk about people are the best part of the business, they can also sometimes be the worst. I mean, it's just human nature. We are inclined to want to trust people. We're inclined to feel like things are going to be okay and work out for the best. but you can't think like that when it comes to this. Sorry, Dave, go ahead.
No, I was going to take us a different route. I'm glad you said that. The route that I was going to take is kind of ask a little bit of a different question, like not to ignore or play down the fact that you need to do, the 5 things I mentioned plus all the things Leela and Alex mentioned, right? If you're going to start using AI in your firm, or frankly, it's already there, which is how we started this call. But we always think about using it first for like efficiency. And one of the areas that I think I've seen a growing trend, or I know I've seen a growing trend lately, is around compliance. And so if we think about how AI and agentic workflows can actually be leveraged, right? They can actually be leveraged to track and audit, essentially make sure that everything is audited that's being done within a firm. And so when you start to have automated workflows, AI or not, that are making entries, ensuring that entries are making it into the CRM, ensuring entries are making it into the portfolio accounting platform, not being reliant on the human to transpose something they heard in a meeting into the notes. They are there, they are auditable. It actually starts to help from a compliance standpoint. And I just don't see enough firms either using that angle or talking about it to show how AI can actually help you be more compliant. Like, yes, there's a risk to be managed, but it's also a tool that can help you manage risk. And people just don't seem to look at it that way.
Do
You
you
should
see it?
say that, James.
Yeah, I was
Because
going
for
to
the
say,
last 2.5 years, our firm has built a compliance technology. I'm sorry, Mark, I had to jump in. To use Andrew's words, right? There are a lot of tech bros who created compliance software not knowing the actual workflows that are needed, the actual steps that need to be taken, what needs to be reviewed to do that kind of auditing, right? And that's pretty much why we got to the point where we got fed up and we were like, F it. I took a basic coding class in college over 20 years ago. My final was take input English, output pirate speech. That's my knowledge of coding. But what I do know is what it takes to do testing, right? So we've worked on building this technology that we actually now use with our clients that does just that. And I think there are, to your point, James, there are a lot of great uses for AI that can help in terms of auditing and testing. But we've got to get all the other things. When we're talking about our listeners who are listening to us, right now and are interested in AI, most of them are not at that level yet, right? So it's mapping out the workflows, it's doing the business planning, understanding where you can get the most bang for your buck, because a lot of them are also strapped budget wise, right? We're not talking about Wells Fargo, Bank of America, these huge firms that have hundreds and thousands of people that are just in one department. You're talking about even your mid-sized RAs are still a hot mess. I know because I work with them. There's a lot that needs to happen there before AI can really be used to streamline. But yeah, there's a lot of uses, and I could go into all of them for compliance because I've been testing it and playing with it. My girl Chat, we're BFFs. But yeah, I think this is where you have to go back to being the responsible entrepreneur, the responsible owner, and you need to take the time and you need to think strategically.
I think that's a great segue to really the roundtable or the rapid fire session that we wanted to do to wrap up the conversation, which is a couple of things. Number one, what's the one thing that firms should start doing today? What's the common mistake that most firms should run away from or avoid? And then one key lesson learned from each panelist's experience. So who would like to kick off?
I'll go first. First thing I would say, what AI has done, it has removed all barriers to entry, regardless of its cybersecurity, regardless of its Layla. You took a tech course 20 years ago. Technology is easy. It's there to help. And I'm really excited for the future. I should say that. I'm excited for where AI is taking us. So in terms of what firms should do today, for me, it's try it. It's as simple as that. Look at your practice, look where your pain points are, and look for technology that can address it. And then just explore, just see where it's going. Because one thing we do know today is the technology of today probably will change within the next 12 months. We don't know, whatever works today will be eclipsed in 6 months. It is truly a journey. And you have to have that journey mindset. This is not a checkbox compliance exercise. AI is here to stay forever, and it will continue to evolve. In terms of one of the most common mistakes, One thing that caught me off guard, I would say, this year in particular, has been the cost management. I never ever gave it much thought until the bill actually came into my desk, and I, holy cow! And if you consider, there's one thing, again, you've seen the headlines, right?
Yeah.
There's one thing, a small AI startup with two engineers spending $50,000, and they're creating this massive tech firm or this technology. There's quite a different discussion to be had if it's 500 engineers spending 50K, right? So the cost management, I think, is really, really important. Knowing what you're going to spend or what you're willing to spend is really important. And then probably the final key lesson, I'll always go back to culture. Again, culture is huge in any organization. And so ensuring that people, again, to Layla's earlier point, people generally want to do the right thing, and technology can help people hugely to achieve that. But you've got to have the right culture in place to make sure that people are doing the right thing, not accidentally getting into trouble, exposing sensitive data or whatever, but making sure that the culture's sound there, that they know we can get the best out of this technology.
Thank you. Well said. Who's up next?
I'll go. All right. So what are our three questions? The first one is one thing firms should start doing today.
Yep.
All
and
right.
then what should they avoid? And then lessons learned.
Okay. I think what you should start doing today is not going to be glamorous. I think it's document your process. I think you need, before you're going to start implementing anything, buying a tool, it really doesn't matter. You need to understand your process. And if you interrogate your own processes, right, it allows you to actually see where a lot of the gaps are. And it lets you start to look at how your firm is being efficient or inefficient and where areas of risk are. So I think it's one of the most important things that a firm could do. They often hire us to do that, and we're happy to do it. But I tell a lot of firms it's something you could do yourself, and it's probably the most valuable service that like we actually offer. So that's what I recommend to firms. Document your process, understand how all the different departments and all the different systems work together. That is the most useful thing you could do. It's the most useful thing you could hand to any vendor you're going to work with or any consultant. It's actually what you're going to pay us to build for you if we work with you. We're going to spend most of our time in the discovery area anyway. So it'll help everyone. One common mistakes firms should avoid. I guess when it comes to AI, I'll just kind of blanket this one with like, don't think you can build your own. Don't think you could go build your own agentic workflow. Don't think you can go build your own software. There are definitely some outliers, but like a very common request lately is like, we want to build our own platform. We want to start selling this. Help us do that. And like, I don't think they understand, what firms like Alex has put into this. This is not a small effort to enter into this space. I think it's great if you want to start tinkering, seeing what tools you could build, things like that. But it's a very different thing to build solutions for your company versus like something to be sold and used by our industry. One key lesson learned from my experience. I guess in this one, I think I'll share something I already shared. I think that AI can actually help you with compliance when done right. And we're all looking for these efficiency gains, and that's not really what it is. It comes in quality of the output. I actually spend more time working, not less, and I use AI constantly. But it's helping me track what I'm doing. It's helping me audit my own time and understand where it's going from an advisor standpoint. It can help you make sure that everything gets logged that should be logged. You know who did what and when, things aren't being missed. So I guess I put two things in there, but it's not an efficiency tool at the end of the day. It starts that way. You start shaving time off some things, and then what you really find out is it lets you work on things you were never going to work on, bring value that you never could have done before. It's an enabler.
Nice. I love that.
Allow me to, then we'll let Layla, she gets the final word. We did not pre-plan that. I just think that she should have the final word. So I think I'm going to lean towards somewhat of a variation of theme with Alex. It's like you need to know who you actually are. You need to know who you are. We started moving under our ADV, other individual RIAs. They folded up and came to us, because they were realizing like, I just don't want to do the operational stuff. I don't want to do the 13Fs. I don't want to do my annual compliance review. Like, I just don't want to do it. I just want to be a really solid operator of what I do well with my clients, or they're getting to a point where like, well, I'm getting closer to retirement, so I really don't want to be dealing with this either. So I think, like in our sales process, when we're looking at people to join first on the RIA, like we're looking for like a business owner. Like they have to be a business owner that understand what do they want to intelligently outsource. So I finished with that, is that the hardest thing to do is for an advisor to who has an RIA, is considering having an RIA, or where they are, whatever it is, just decide who you are, because then that's going to dictate what you're going to do forward. Like then that dictates culture, that dictates how you operate, what tools you're going to add. Is what are you, where do you want to be? Then we at our sister company, because now this is the what have we learned, right? That's the question, the what have we learned. Or is that the last question? Wait,
No, that's the last question. Yeah, the second question is what's the one common mistake most
it's
people?
good. One common mistake. Yes, people don't have enough SOPs, don't have enough workflow understanding. And then in our sister company inside of Rossby Office, so it's Upwork, for those who don't know what Upwork is, Upwork for the financial advisory world. Well, we work with all of these people, and we finish, a couple times throughout the year where somebody will call us and say, look, I just need my workflows documented. Can you just do that? And that's an easy lift for us. That's not a problem. We have a bunch of people that went through Six Sigma that work, as our providers over there. They're like, oh, I'll do this all day long. And then it's nice to then deliver that back to them. But just like we'll say like a personal trainer, is that you could build all these things for people at the end of the day. And then this comes back to what have I learned? So that's the common thing, is most people do not have those things cleanly where you can go XYZ. I'm not saying we're infallible. We've found things like, oh, we didn't have that written down. Well, shit, let's write that down. And then it's going to be what we learned is that for whatever we do, whatever we create, it really comes down to that RIA, that office, that, I don't know, family office, whoever it is, you still have to do it. So much like as a personal trainer, yeah, I could build you your meal plan, your workout plan. I can even be at the gym with you, but like I can't lift those weights for you.
Yeah.
I can't run that mile for you. You still have to do it. And we run into a lot of times where sometimes these teams or individuals they just don't do it. And they'd be better off working inside of or with a collective, with a team. And then if you notice, that then rolls all the way back to my first thing of decide who you are. Just decide who you are.
Great point. We don't rise to the level of our goals. We fall to the level of our systems.
It's a good one.
Right. Leila.
So one thing firms should absolutely do today is they should get in their calendars and they should go and block out a whole day once a quarter. No calls, no family events, just a whole day that you are blocking emergency only access where you commit to working on your business that day every quarter. And then what I would say is on that day, you need to start mapping out what you need to do to start cleaning up your firm, right? So mapping out workflows. There's so many firms, and this even happened at the big firms I used to work at, where it's like the person that is leaving, got fired, decided to quit, is training you to do their job. And you're asking questions, well, this is how I did it. This is the way I do it. This is how I figured out. No. You need to start getting really regimented. And in order to eat the elephant, you've got to take a bite at a time. So every quarter, plan out, what are you accomplishing that quarter? What are you cleaning up? What processes are you implementing? Right? So Andrew's point is very important. You have to know what kind of business you are. There are some businesses that are trying to be everything to everybody. You're going to fail. You can't be. Not everyone's going to like you. You've got to find your people. That also means you've got to find the business that's going to make you happiest. What is the service? And you've got to make sure the end product, your clients, are happy with what you're delivering. That means consistency. That means replicability. That means being able to scale. That requires workflows. That requires SOPs. It means regularly going back and tweaking processes and improving as you grow and scale. And businesses are growing and scaling faster than ever before because of technological advancements, because of the demand out there for service. So, I think where firms really should start is let's just make the time to start working on your business. Let's go ahead and block the time. Non-negotiable, get the nannies lined up, tell your spouse or partner, turn that damn phone off. There is nothing happening. I remember the days where we didn't have cell phones and you had to pick up a phone and call someone. And we were not in touch as often as we are now. So start there. Common mistake firms should avoid is that they can implement AI now. Go get your cybersecurity cleaned up. If you don't have an internal IT person, go outsource it. Make sure you have those accountability tools in place. I tell all of our clients, send me the vendor contract. I want to know what services were promised to you, what you're paying for, and then we need to go make sure they're delivering it. If they're supposed to be doing ongoing monitoring, if they're supposed to be doing testing, if they're supposed to be sending out, monthly fake phishing emails to test your team and whether they're going to click the button, then let's make sure they're doing those things. You've got to clean that stuff up. Don't just rush into something because of FOMO. I promise you're not missing out on a whole lot right now, right? Because there are a ton of studies out there too that the ROI on AI hasn't been all that great quite yet. So chill out. Let's go clean up. Don't think you need to implement AI today. It's not necessary. And then just a lesson I've learned is that ultimately we're in a regulated industry. You answer to the regulators, whether that's your state or the SEC, you answer to the regulators. So the 5 points that James made earlier, none of that stuff's new. None of those requirements are new. Those are all things you are required to do as a regulated RIA in this industry. So making sure that you understand who you answer to at the end of the day. After your wife, it's the regulators, right? That's who you answer to. So make sure you're making those incremental steps. Make sure you have the systems. And no matter how sexy and amazing my girl Chat is or my girl Claude, you still have to review the output, right? Remember, it is open source data. It's based on the world of data that's out there. Not all of it's great. Not all of it's accurate. Some of it's complete bullshit, but that's where you get the hallucinations. That's where you get incidents of bias based on outputs. You've always got to review. And if you don't know much about what you're asking it to do, it's probably not a good question to ask. I'm not going to ask it to code me something because, again, I only know how to take English into pirate speech. That's the basis of my coding. So I can't ask it to output something that I wouldn't even know how to review to make sure it's okay.
Well said. Thank you so much. Ed Vasco.
I've been really, really quiet on this entire webinar, and I just want to thank you all because I've been nodding my head and saying, yep, through a lot of this. So truly, truly appreciate it all. And I think you've all hit on so many great things. So I'm going to leave it and just saying, yep, follow all that wonderful advice. And that's the best thing you can do.
Are we going to get an AI summary of everything?
Absolutely. Yeah, we've got
15 on here.
15 note takers on here. So
yeah.
Well, let me do this. So let me wrap this up, and I'll provide a couple of answers to those prompts, to those questions. So, and again, probably nothing different than what anybody else has said, but I'll just reframe it from Mark's perspective is, what's the one thing that you should start doing today is understanding your current state. You have to understand where you're at in your journey. People, process, systems, tools, right? Corporate strategy, business model. The common mistake that firms make is they don't know where they're going to go. So if you don't know where you're at, what your current state is, and if you don't know where you're going, how do you get there? You don't, right? Like your journey is a hot mess because you don't know where you're starting and you don't know what your vision is and you don't know what your organization should look like 24, 36, right? 60 months from now. And you get lost in the wilderness, okay? Last thing is key lessons learned is change fatigue is a real thing. And with the rate of change of technology, of business models, of services, organizations that will not just survive, but thrive in the next 2 to 5 years will master organizational change. And that's a cultural competency. right? And that starts from the top of the organization. So those are some of the recommendations that I have just to kind of boil this down. I can't thank the panelists enough. I thought that, this was a fantastic discussion. We're really looking forward to some of the next sessions. We will be publishing, right, this content. So I guess the last thing that I'd like to ask from a panel perspective is, are there any other like key takeaways, recommendations, or calls to action, right? Because every one of you has been so gracious with your time, and we value and appreciate your time. But is there a call to action that, we'd like to promote or we'd like to offer to the audience from any one of your firms?
I'll jump in. So we have something called Compliance University. We have a free course on Reg SP, which I think would be a great course for everyone to jump in and take. There's a ton of resources. So there's sample policies, data mapping spreadsheet, so that firms can start looking at their vendors and what data they have. There's template letters to vendors to make sure they're going to comply with the expectations of these amendments to Reg SP. I think those are really important to make sure your cybersecurity infrastructure is there before we start implementing AI and giving it data to analyze. We have that, and it's not ready yet, but probably will be by the time this airs. We also have a how to use AI in your business course that's also going to be free. That will be at Compliance University. So I'll send over those links. Also, I have a document that I will send over that talks about AI and kind of all the different areas in your compliance program where you should have language referencing AI. So whether it's Form ADD, your policies, procedures, cybersecurity, etc. So I'll send that over as well.
Awesome. Yeah, thank you so much. Andrew?
Yep. But what we always like to say is if you're looking for some virtual fractional help, come check us out at ouroffice.team. It's growing a lot faster than I thought it would, which is good and bad, but it's really good. So many people say, look, I just don't want to do these two things. Can you do them? Sure, no problem. That, and then inside of the RIA, we're Microsoft 365, Google Workspace. We're the infrastructure RIA. You don't want to stand one up on your own, or you don't want to be part of a gigantic aggregator. We fit right in between that gap to all the things we talked about here today. Well, we're doing them, and we're working with these great professionals that are on this call too. So we hit the gap for you. We love a business owner.
I love that. Anybody else? Visory has a few things to offer.
Sure. Oh, we'll chime in here. So at WealthTech Select, we monitor the whole ecosystem. Like I said, we're tracking over 1,500 different technology and service providers in the space, and we provide professional services and guidance on top of those. So two of the areas that we can help specifically as it relates to the call today, if you're actively looking at different technology tools or specifically AI tools, we can help you decide which is the best fit for your firm. And I'm very intentional with those words. Best fit for your firm, not which is the best one, which one's got the most features, but the one that's going to bring your firm the most utility based on your goals. And then we also have another offering where we help firms with kind of an introduction to AI, helping you understand how to use AI responsibly and compliantly in your organization. And then when you get to a certain point, we'll help you find my RA lawyer or someone else like Visory who can help you with your organization. So we're here to help you get started. We want to make AI less scary. We want to make technology selection less scary.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
Up next, so
Please.
Advisor 360, we deliver a modern platform advisory experience using AI so advisors can focus on what really matters, and that's advising their clients. If I have one piece of advice, regardless of which technology solutions you're looking for, always ask the direct questions. What are firms doing for AI governance? And if they're unable to articulate and actually demonstrate what they're doing, then that should be seen as a red flag.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Yeah, just to wrap up, so Visory is initiating a series of paid-for market research studies. So if you'd like to participate in market research studies, some of the studies and some of the research is about the market. It's about AI, it's about technology, it's about goals and objectives of your organization as you begin to evolve and go on your growth journey. So if you would like to participate in those, please reach out. We do have a variety of RIA as well as high net worth cybersecurity and risk and compliance checklists that we do provide at no cost. And so for those aggregators and for those wealth advisors that are dealing with high net worth or family offices, and they are looking for, hey, here's some checklists, and these are just some things that you can be doing to protect your generational wealth, right? Or your assets, please reach out. With that, what I'd like to do is just, again, thank the panel, value and appreciate every one of you. Each one of you has a different perspective, but we have some common ground, right? And we have some common opinions about the marketplace. Rest assured, we are all about adding value to this industry and helping organizations to grow and thrive and be secure profitably. So with that, I'm going to wrap up. Thank you all so much. Value and appreciate each one of you, and looking forward to the next discussion.
Thanks. Take
Thank
care,
you,
guys.
Thanks, everybody.
Thanks, Ed.
Thank you, team.